It was a message that landed like a thunderclap across KwaZulu-Natal. Blunt, unapologetic, and impossible to ignore. In a province already simmering with tension, His Majesty King Msuzulu Caswell chose clarity over comfort, issuing a warning that has since echoed through social media, community WhatsApp groups, and political corridors alike. The message was simple, but its implications were profound. KwaZulu-Natal is not a playground for lawlessness, disrespect, or provocation, and anyone who believes otherwise has misunderstood both the land and the people who call it home. Speaking through his spokesperson, Prince Thelani Zulu, the Zulu monarch made it clear that foreign nationals living in KwaZulu-Natal are expected to conduct themselves with respect and within the bounds of the law. Any form of criminal behavior, arrogance, or disregard for local communities, he warned, will not be tolerated. While misbehavior may be overlooked or mishandled elsewhere, Zululand, the king stressed, is not a place where such conduct will be indulged. The tone of the message was firm, even confrontational, and deliberately so. According to those close to the royal household, the king was responding to growing frustration among ordinary people, frustration that has been building quietly for years, but has recently begun boiling over into open anger. At the heart of the king's message lies a deeply emotional truth for many South Africans. This land is not optional. For citizens of this country, there is no alternative homeland to retreat to when things fall apart. South Africa is not a temporary stop or a place of convenience. It is the only home they have. That reality, the king emphasized, must be respected by everyone who chooses to live within its borders. Foreign nationals, he said, all have countries of origin. They have places they can return to if circumstances demand it. South Africans do not have that luxury. This distinction, according to the monarch, makes respect for local laws, customs, and social order non-negotiable. The statement did not emerge in a vacuum. Across KwaZulu-Natal, particularly in densely populated townships and urban centers, complaints against some foreign nationals have intensified. These range from allegations of involvement in drug trafficking and organized crime to accusations of disrespectful behavior toward locals, especially women and elders. There are also long-standing grievances about undocumented migrants placing pressure on already stretched public services, competing for scarce jobs, and operating businesses without proper registration. In recent months, viral videos circulating on platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and X have poured petrol on an already smoldering fire. Clips showing alleged confrontations between locals and foreign nationals, accusations of mockery or arrogance, and incidents of criminal activity have spread rapidly, often stripped of context but heavy with emotion. Each video, each post, has deepened resentment and sharpened the sense that authorities are failing to act decisively. It is against this backdrop that King Msuzulu chose to speak. Importantly, while his words were uncompromising, they were not a call to violence. On the contrary, the king explicitly urged communities to remain calm and exercise self-restraint. He acknowledged the anger many people feel but warned that uncontrolled rage would only lead to chaos, bloodshed, and long-term damage to social cohesion. Instead, the monarch threw his weight behind lawful processes. He voiced support for government initiatives aimed at deporting undocumented foreign nationals who break the law and stressed that enforcement must happen through the proper channels. South Africa, he said, is a constitutional state, not a mob-driven society. But his message also carried a clear rebuke to those who exploit South Africa's freedoms. According to the king, the rights enshrined in the Constitution are not a license for criminality. Freedom of movement does not mean freedom to deal drugs. The right to live in South Africa does not include the right to insult, intimidate, or provoke local communities. Hospitality, he reminded everyone, is not the same as weakness. This framing has resonated powerfully with many South Africans, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, where traditional leadership still holds significant moral authority. For some, The king articulated what politicians have been too cautious or too divided to say openly. Supporters of the king's stance argue that his message reflects the lived reality of people on the ground. They point to rising crime, drug abuse among youth, and the visible presence of undocumented migrants in informal settlements and city centers. To them, his words are not xenophobic, but protective, a defense of social order and community dignity. Others, however, have expressed concern. Human rights activists and migrant advocacy groups warn that such statements, even when framed carefully, risk inflaming tensions in a country with a painful history of xenophobic violence. They argue that crime should be addressed through policing and justice systems, not nationality-based narratives. In their view, criminality is not confined to any one group, and collective blame can quickly spiral into vigilantism. The royal household has pushed back against these criticisms, insisting that the king's message has been deliberately mischaracterized by some commentators. According to Prince Thulani Zulu, the monarch was not condemning foreign nationals as a whole, nor calling for their expulsion. His focus, the spokesperson emphasized, was strictly on behavior, illegal, disrespectful, and provocative actions that undermine peace and stability. The king's position, they say, is consistent. Those who obey the law have nothing to fear. Those who break it must face consequences. This distinction is crucial, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, where memories of past outbreaks of violence remain raw. The king's call for calm reflects an acute awareness of how quickly frustration can tip into bloodshed if not carefully managed. At the same time, the message has intensified pressure on government, particularly law enforcement and immigration authorities. Many locals are now openly asking whether the state is willing and able to act on the concerns being raised. Deportation backlogs, porous borders, and perceived corruption within the immigration system have long undermined public confidence. For years, residents have complained that reporting undocumented migrants or criminal activity leads nowhere. Files disappear. Raids are announced but not sustained. Arrests are made, only for suspects to return days later. In that context, the king's words feel to some like a moral intervention, a reminder that authority still exists beyond bureaucratic paralysis. Politically, the statement places national leaders in a delicate position. Ignore it, and they risk appearing disconnected from grassroots anger. Embrace it too enthusiastically, and they risk accusations of xenophobia and constitutional overreach. The result is a careful balancing act, with officials reaffirming the rule of law while urging restraint. What cannot be denied is that the message has shifted the national conversation. Suddenly, issues that were often whispered about are being discussed openly. Community meetings are drawing larger crowds. Calls for stricter immigration enforcement are growing louder. And foreign nationals themselves, many of whom live quietly and lawfully, find themselves caught in a storm not of their making, anxious about being judged collectively for the actions of a few. Some migrant leaders have responded by urging their communities to be extra vigilant about complying with laws and respecting local customs. They acknowledge that bad behavior by a minority has damaged trust and insist that cooperation, not confrontation, is the only way forward. In the end, King Msuzulu Caswell-Athene's message reflects a deeper national struggle: how to balance compassion with control, hospitality with sovereignty, and constitutional ideals with lived realities. KwaZulu-Natal, like much of South Africa, is under pressure. Poverty, unemployment, crime, and inequality create fertile ground for resentment. When people feel ignored or unsafe, anger looks for a target. The king's intervention attempts to redirect that anger away from chaos and toward order, away from violence and toward accountability. Whether the state rises to meet this moment remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: the warning has been issued, and it has been heard. In the heart of Zululand, the message is no longer ambiguous. Respect the law, respect the people, or face the consequences, not through mob justice, but through the authority of a society determined to protect what little stability it has left. In a country wrestling with its identity, its borders, and its future, those words carry weight far beyond KwaZulu-Natal.